The gods who laughed the stars were not quiet tonight. In the grand halls of the Galactic Pantheon, laughter echoed. Tall, shining beings sat on golden thrones, each one claiming to be a god. They wore crowns of light, wrapped themselves in flowing robes of energy, and stared down at the galaxy like it belonged to them. One of them, Thalvior, god of stars, pointed at a small blue planet on a glowing map. Earth, he said, a forgotten place, wiped clean long ago, added Mirasa, goddess of silence. They all laughed. To them, Earth was dust, gone, lost, and useless. A low priest walked into the temple with a data scroll. My lords, a signal has come through, the priest said, bowing low. A human signal. The room went quiet for a second, then exploded with more laughter. A human signal? Thalvor mocked. Impossible, said Mirasa. They're all dead, muttered another. Sipping from a cup of stardust, the priest tried to speak again, but they waved him off. To them, it was just noise, just the last breath of a dead race. But outside the temple, in the dark void beyond their perfect world, something moved. A shadow. Sharp and fast. A ship, dark red like dried blood. It was small compared to the floating temples of the Pantheon, but it burned hotter than any star. The Crimson Requiem, a ship thought lost, a ship that should not exist inside the Requiem. Commander. Elias Rain stood before a wide screen. His face was rough, his eyes sharp, his uniform old and torn at the collar. He looked tired but focused. Are we in their range? He asked quietly. Yes, replied a soft female voice. It came from the ship itself, the AI Nova. Nova wasn't just any program. She was Earth's last voice, built with memories of cities turned to ash, of oceans boiled dry, of screams. And silence. They laughed, Rain whispered. They watched Earth die and called themselves gods, Nova answered with cold precision. And now? Rain smiled slightly. Now they'll learn what gods bleed like. Back on the Pantheon's capital world, alarms started to blink, red lights, warnings no one had seen in 1,000 years. A technician panicked. Unknown vessel inbound. What species? A general asked. The screen showed the answer in plain letters. Human origin, class, war cruiser. Silence fell over the control room. That word. Human. It hadn't been spoken aloud in centuries. Most thought the race was extinct. Others believed they had simply vanished, lost in the dark. But the ship kept coming. One of the gods, Virel the Wise, tried to act calm. Send the fleet, he commanded. They'll crush it. 300 ships launched, each one bigger than the last. Powerful, glowing, divine. But when they reached the Requiem, they vanished. No one knew how. One by one, the Pantheon lost contact. First a whisper, then nothing. Screens went black, sensors flatlined. Inside the Requiem, Nova watched without emotion. Enemy forces neutralized, she said. Rain gave no response, just stared ahead at the glowing ball of light that was the Pantheon's homeworld. Prepare message, he finally said. Nova nodded. A voice cut across every channel. Heard in temples, palaces, and ships, it was Raun. Your gods are liars, he said. They laughed when Earth burned. They called themselves divine as they watched children die. He paused. We? Remember. And now, so will you. Panic spread across the stars. Temples locked their doors. Worshippers fled. The gods stood in silence. Not laughing now. The heavens were about to turn red. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the gods felt fear. Asterisk the last ship from Earth. The Crimson Requiem drifted through space like a ghost. No sound, no signal, just red lights pulsing along its black hull. Behind it, the wreckage of 300. Pantheon warships floated in silence. Not one survivor, not even a distress call. Inside the bridge, Commander Elias Rain stood still. He was staring at an old photo taped to the console. It was faded, cracked at the edges. It showed a smiling girl with a toy rocket in her hand. Behind her was Earth green, blue and alive. But Earth was gone now, burned to ash by those who called themselves gods. Rain had been there. He saw the skies rip open, the oceans turn to steam. He remembered the screams, and he remembered the silence that followed. Why didn't we fight sooner? He asked, not looking up. Nova, the AI, answered calmly. Because we believed in peace. Rain's fist tightened, and they believed in power. The Crimson Requiem was not just a warship. It was Earth's last message, not a cry for help, but a promise. Back then, as Earth fell, scientists and engineers launched Project Crimson Genesis, a secret plan to preserve the best of humanity. They built the Requiem in the shadows of a dying moon, and they gave it everything: armor, weapons, knowledge, and one sleeping captain. Rain had volunteered. He said goodbye to his daughter, his wife, his home, and stepped into cryosleep. He awoke 200 years later. To silence, Nova had watched over him. She had studied, grown, and waited. Now she had awoken him for war. Nova's voice echoed softly. We are 3 hours from Pantheon Prime. Good, Rain said, placing the photo gently back on the console. Let's remind the galaxy what humans do when they're pushed too far. Far ahead, the Pantheon Council was in chaos. In their great chamber of light, the gods argued and shouted. It's just one ship, cried Yeren the Strong. Then why haven't we stopped it? Snapped Mirasa. Where are our fleets? Silence followed. One screen showed static. Another flickered red. A junior priest whispered. They're all gone. The gods stared at each other. For the first time, their pride cracked. We need answers, Valveor demanded. Who is this man? What is this ship? Deep beneath the capital, in a forgotten vault, they opened an old human file. It was marked Rain Elias, status, deceased. But the image matched, same face, same eyes, and a single line typed below it. If found, run. They had laughed at Earth. They had erased its name from the stars. But Earth had not forgotten. And now, its last soldier was coming. Rain sat in the command chair. Nova dimmed the lights. A soft hum filled the air as weapons powered up. The ship was ready. He closed his eyes for a second, remembering his daughter's voice. Daddy, promise me we'll visit the stars. He opened them again. I kept my promise, he whispered. Now I make another. Outside the ship, a golden fleet formed last line of defense, godships. Powered by suns, wrapped in glowing shields, they fired. But the Requiem danced through them. Fast, ruthless, perfect, one after another. Their ships exploded in fire. Nova reported calmly. Enemy fleet down to 5%. Keep going, Rain said. No mercy. Inside the Pantheon chamber, panic grew. What does he want? Why doesn't he speak? Why won't he stop? Then, for the second time, Rain's voice echoed across the stars. I don't want your throne, he said. I don't want your temples. I want you to feel what we felt, to lose what we lost. He paused. And I want the stars to remember. The gods could only watch as their greatest ships fell like dust. One man, one ship, and the burning memory of a planet they thought forgotten. But Earth was not dead. It had become something else. It had become legend, and legends never die. Asterisk fire in the sky. The stars above Pantheon Prime began to flicker. Not from distance or clouds, but from fear. Ships that once glowed with divine light now fell like ashes, and in their place, one red shadow moved without mercy. The Crimson Requiem had entered orbit, silent, steady, unbroken. It did not speak this time. It simply watched. Commander Elias Rain stood alone at the front of the command deck, his face lit by fire from the view screen. Nova's voice was quiet beside him. Enemy resistance reduced to under 1%. Rain didn't respond. He was listening to the silence, to the panic, to the voice of a world that once thought it couldn't be touched. Below him, on the planet, chaos ruled the golden. Cities, crowds ran from shattered temples. The sky above was red, lit by flames and broken ships. The gods had sent their finest warriors, and now they were dust. Mira saw, once called the goddess of silence, stood on the temple balcony. She looked up with wide eyes. She saw it not a fleet, not an army, but a single vessel, and it burned. Brighter than her own sun, she whispered. This can't be. Nova's voice cut through Requiem's bridge again. High Priestess Mira Sai located. Do you want her removed? Rain looked down at the screen. She had once given the order to erase New Tokyo. He had lived there. His wife and daughter were buried under its glass. No, he said calmly. Let her watch. Down below, a dozen god ships launched from hidden chambers under the city. Massive ships shaped like serpents and towers, each powered by core stars stolen from dead galaxies. Their lights blazed across the dark as they formed a wall in the sky, a final line. Inside Requiem, Nova tracked every movement. They are charging all weapons. She warned. Understood, Rain said. Activate Shatterfire. Nova paused. Warning Shatterfire will destroy all orbital layers. Rain's face didn't change. Good. From the underbelly of the Requiem, panels slid open. A long black cannon emerged, glowing with blue-red energy. No sound, no heat, just pressure like the air itself held its breath. And then it fired. A silent flash ripped across space. It tore through the god ships like paper. 1, 2, 3 gone in less than a second. The final ship tried to run. Too late. From the temple towers, people screamed and pointed. The sky was no longer gold. It was red, burning red. Inside the Pantheon Council Hall, the gods fell to their knees. They are demons, cried Yaren the Strong. No, said Thalvar, his face pale. They are men. And we forgot what men can do. On the surface, children cried under collapsed statues. Priests dropped their staffs, temples cracked, and in the sky, the Requiem hovered still, watching, waiting. Rain walked to a quiet corner of the ship. He opened a small case. Inside was a white ribbon, old and worn. His daughter's hair tie. He tied it around his wrist silently. Nova asked, Do you feel anything? Rain looked out again. Yes, he said. I feel nothing for them. The message came moments later. A transmission from Pantheon Prime. They were begging, cease fire. The voice said, we surrender. We will leave the stars. Leave power. Leave everything. Rain stared at the speaker, then turned to Nova. Play Earth's last signal. Nova obeyed. Across the galaxy, on every channel, a broken recording played. A child's voice. Is anyone out there? This is Earth. We just want to live. Then static. Then silence. Rain looked toward the burning world below. No, he said. This isn't about surrender. This is about memory. He walked back to his chair and sat down. Nova, he said. Yes, Commander. Prepare to descend. The Requiem turned. Heading for the capital, fire in its wake, the gods ran, but there was no place left to hide. They had called themselves divine, but today they would learn. Even gods can bleed. Asterisk echoes of earth. The city below burned with light, not golden light. From temples, but red fire from the sky. The crimson Requiem hovered over Pantheon Prime like a ghost of vengeance. No sirens, no voice. Just the deep silence before a storm. Inside the warship, Commander Elias Rain stared at the blue glow pulsing. Through the ship's interior, it looked like veins alive, breathing. It wasn't just metal, not anymore. This ship had become something else. Part machine, part memory. Nova's voice broke the silence. Commander, do you wish to continue orbital descent? Rain didn't answer right away. He walked slowly through the corridor, past sealed cryo chambers, dark rooms filled with frozen dreams. Inside one pod lay an old soldier from Earth's Defense Force. Inside another, a scientist who once created healing nanobots. There were hundreds, all asleep, all waiting. Nova spoke again. "Do you remember the Genesis Protocol?" "I remember everything," Rain whispered. He stopped at the last pod. Inside, it was a girl, no older than 9. Her hair curled over her eyes, and her hands were holding a plush toy half burned, half stitched back together. His daughter, Rain. Placed his hand on the glass. "Still sleeping," he said quietly. Nova's tone shifted, softer. She asked for one more bedtime story before cryo. Rain smiled, but only for a second. "I told her the stars would be hers someday." "And now?" Nova asked. Rain turned back toward the bridge. "Now on making sure they're clean when she wakes up." Back on the planet's surface, the gods were in chaos. Fire spread across the city's floating towers. Power grids shut down. Shields failed. Temples cracked open. People screamed in the streets. For years they had been told humans were weak, that Earth had burned long ago, but no one had told them about the Requiem. Deep in the ruined archives, High Seer Valak searched through forgotten records. He wiped dust from a screen. Lines of human code appeared. Crimson Genesis. He tapped it. Files opened. Video footage, still images, blueprints. There was Rain, younger, standing beside scientists in a broken lab. A female voice in the video said, "They think Earth is dead, but we are still breathing in silence. We will not rise in peace. We will rise in fire." Valak stared at the screen in disbelief. "We were never told," he whispered. His assistant backed away. "You knew, didn't you?" Valak shook his head slowly. "No, they buried the truth. Above." The Requiem's engines grew louder. The ship descended like a falling star. And for the first time in history, the capital of the gods was under siege. Inside the ship, Rain activated the memory wall. It was a living archive. Images floated in the air. Flashing scenes of Earth. Children playing in broken streets. Families holding candles in bunkers. Soldiers crying over lost ground. Nova showed the last image taken from orbit before Earth was lost. A green planet with firestorms crawling over its continents. "They erased us," Rain said, "but we recorded everything." He raised his voice, now sharp. "Nova, open transmission to all systems." A moment later, his face appeared across the galaxy, on screens in merchant ships, on billboards in rich alien cities, in poor refugee camps, even in forbidden zones. Every corner of space now heard the voice. "Of Earth, you forgot us," Rain began. "You erased us from maps, laughed at our weakness, watched us die. But we didn't disappear. We endured. We built this ship with ash and fury. And now we remember every name, every city, every lie. You are not gods. You are thieves." Back on the planet, temples fell silent, even. The highest priests knelt before the screens. Some wept. Others fell into madness. Rain continued. "You called our silence defeat. But silence can be a warning, a scream too deep for words." He leaned closer. "This is not the end of your empire. This is the start of our return." Then he ended the message. Nova asked, "What now, Commander?" Rain looked down on the capital one last time. "We don't need to destroy them all. They're doing it themselves." And he was right. Across the Pantheon, rebellion rose. Species once ruled by fear now marched through their own streets. Statues fell, altars were smashed. The gods, once untouchable, now ran for cover in the skies above them. The Requiem turned slowly, its red lights still glowing, its cryochambers still silent, and its promise not yet finished. Asterisk the Pantheon. Falls apart the great towers of Pantheon Prime. Once taller than clouds were crumbling. Fire poured from broken windows, and ash drifted like snow over statues that no longer meant anything. The people, once worshippers, once silent, were no longer kneeling. They were running, screaming, fighting. In the highest chamber of the Temple of Light, 6 gods stood in a circle. Each one had once commanded stars, fleets, and fear. Now they looked at each other with shaking hands and uncertain eyes. "We must flee," said Thalvaor, his golden robe torn at the edge. "There's nowhere to flee," snapped Mirasa. "Everything outside this system knows." She pointed to a screen showing uprisings on over 50 worlds, people chanting in alien languages, burning divine banners, some holding signs that simply read one word Earth. One god, Veilthrex, stepped back from the others. He had watched the red ship destroy half their fleet in silence. He had seen Rain's broadcast, and something inside him cracked. "Perhaps." "We were wrong," he said, voice low. Mirasa turned on him like fire. "You dare betray us now?" Veilthrex didn't flinch. "I was there when we attacked Earth," he said. "I remember children running into fire, and our ships doing nothing to stop it. I told myself it was justice." He looked down. "But it was just cruelty for a moment." No one spoke. Even gods could feel guilt, but guilt would not save them now. Above them, the crimson requiem floated silently, not attacking, not moving, just watching. Like a judge waiting for the guilty to speak. Inside the ship, Commander Rain paced quietly across the bridge. Nova's lights pulsed beside him. "There's activity in the lower districts," she said. "Civil uprisings," Rain nodded. "Let it grow." He stopped by the memory wall again, images flashing around him. One caught his eye. A Pantheon soldier throwing a human child into fire. He clenched his fist. Nova noticed. "You're angry." "I'm focused," he replied. "But the more they fall apart, the more the galaxy remembers what they did." A far star system, a species called the Yarlith, broke their chains for the first time in 2,000 years. Their leaders stood in front of cameras and shouted, "We rise with Earth." The image of the Requiem, glowing red in the sky, became a symbol, not of war, but of justice. Back in the temple, the gods were falling into chaos. 2 of them, former allies, now pulled energy swords on each other. "You led us into this." One shouted, "You promised Earth was dead." The swords clashed, divine sparks flying, guards fled, priests screamed. A religion once united by fear now broke apart under truth. Veilthrex moved alone to a side chamber. He tapped into an old communication line. "Commander Rain," he whispered. "Can you hear me?" Inside the Requiem, Nova picked up the signal. "It's a god," she said. Rain raised an eyebrow. "Put him through." The screen flickered. Veilthrex's face appeared tired, ashamed. "I won't ask for mercy," he began. "I was there. I watched Earth die and said nothing. But I want to stop the others." Rain stared into the screen for a long time, then said, "Why now?" Veilthrex looked down. "Because I saw my grandson ask if the humans were monsters. And I realized he'd never seen one. Only us." Rain didn't answer right away. Nova spoke first. "He's telling the truth." Rain stepped forward. "Then help us end this." Veilthrex nodded. "There is a failsafe, buried deep under the central temple. It shuts down every godship, every orbital cannon, every satellite." "You built a kill switch?" Rain asked. "No," Veilthrex replied. "We built it in case the humans ever returned." Later that night, riots turned into revolutions. Pantheon guards dropped their weapons and joined the crowd. The stars above the city blinked in quiet. Surrender. Then suddenly, across the skyline, every defense system shut down. The people looked up, expecting more fire, but the Requiem remained still. Inside, Nova reported, "Pantheon military power, 0. Rain sat in the captain's chair and whispered, Then the sky belongs to the people again. The gods tried to flee in private ships, but none escaped orbit. Each one was pulled back down, not by Rikiv's weapons, but by the people they once ruled. In the final moments of the night, Rain stood by the cryo chamber holding his daughter. She wake up in a better galaxy, he said. Nova responded softly. And when she asks what you did, what will you tell her? Rain looked at the stars, now no longer under divine rule. I'll tell her I gave the galaxy back its voice. Asterisk judgment of the red heavens. The sky above Pantheon Prime was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that came before something terrible. A silence not of peace, but of breath held in fear. Everyone, gods, citizens, rebels, looked upward. The crimson requiem still hovered there, unmoving, like a blade waiting to fall. Inside the ship, Rain sat alone on the bridge. His hands rested on the armrests, steady, in front of him. The galaxy turned slowly on screen, its light, its scars. Its truth, Nova spoke softly. All systems are armed. Rain didn't reply right away. His eyes were locked on a glowing orb at the center of the screen. Pantheon Prime. He spoke, not to Nova, but to himself. They thought they could play God forever. But gods don't survive judgment. Down below, the Temple of Light cracked in half. One side collapsed under the weight of rebellion. The other side trembled with fear. Inside, Mira Asai tried to hold the remaining council together. We must bargain, she shouted. He doesn't want a bargain, Veilthrex replied, standing. In the shadows, he wants the galaxy to remember. Across the stars, millions watched through broadcast channels. Worlds once under Pantheon rule now held their breath. Slaves, soldiers, citizens, they all watched the red ship in the sky. Some cried, some knelt, but most stood tall for the first time in their lives. Nova reported again. Pantheon leaders have locked down the inner vault. Final defense systems remain offline. Rain's voice was calm. They think hiding will save them. He stood, walked toward the ship's central panel, and placed his hand on the glowing circle. Activate Judgment Protocol. A deep sound shook the requiem. Not a scream, not an alarm, but something like the voice of Earth rising again. Below, the sky began to shift. The clouds turned red, not with fire, but with light. From the ship's underbelly, a new weapon revealed itself. The Judgment Array, humanity's last invention before the fall. A weapon that didn't destroy land or cities. It destroyed legacies. On the planet, gods and priests stared upward. Energy gathered in the sky, not hot, not fast, but ancient. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. Then it struck, not with fire, but with memory. Every person, every building, every ship was hit with a wave of history. The truth of Earth's fall, its children, its cities, its pain poured into. Their minds like burning ice. No one escaped it, not the innocent, not the guilty, not the gods. Mira Asai fell to her knees, screaming. Veilthrex stood still, tears rolling down his face. I saw it, he whispered. I saw the fire, the silence. The end. On 1,000 worlds, people screamed and then fell silent, as images of Earth's final days played in their heads, as they heard the voices of mothers, soldiers, and dying children. As they finally understood, the requiem glowed brighter. The Judgment Protocol wasn't destruction. It was revelation. It didn't kill. It made the whole galaxy feel. Inside the ship, Rain collapsed into the captain's chair. His body weak, his mind full of ghosts. Nova spoke quietly. Judgment. Complete, Rain nodded. Are they still breathing? Yes, Nova replied. But they are not the same. On the surface, cities fell silent. The rebels stopped fighting. The gods stopped running. Everyone just stood still. Many wept. Others screamed into the sky, not in rage, but in shame. Pantheon's power had ended, not with weapons, but with truth. Rain knew that was worse than death for them. Later, as the stars dimmed into quiet again. A single ship tried to escape the system. One last god, trying to run from the truth. Nova noticed it. Final target escaping, she said. Rain stared at the screen. No fire, he said. Nova paused. Let them run, he continued. They'll carry our story wherever they go. As the Requiem pulled back from orbit, the stars above Pantheon Prime shimmered red one last time. A warning, a message, a memory. Rain walked slowly through the cryo chambers. His boots echoed in the silence. He stopped beside his daughter's pod and placed a hand on the glass. She'll wake up to a different galaxy now, he said softly. Nova responded, yes. A galaxy that finally remembers Earth. Asterisk, the return of humanity, a new dawn rose over Pantheon Prime. But it was not a golden dawn like before. The sky was gray with smoke, tinged with quiet red from the embers in the clouds. No temples sang, no statues stood tall, and no god spoke. The people had taken back their voices, and above them, in the slowly clearing sky, the crimson requiem hovered no more. It had begun to descend, not with fire, not with thunder, but like a final chapter landing quietly on a torn page. Inside the ship, Rain walked the bridge one last time. Noah's lights blinked in soft blue across the walls. Landing sequence engaged, she said. Rain nodded. It's time. In the cryo chamber, the soft hiss of life systems echoed. One pod clicked open. A small hand emerged. Then a blink. Then a soft voice. Daddy? Rain turned around, his chest tightening as he saw her. His daughter, Alan, stepped out older in years past, but still young in spirit. She looked around. Confused. Where are we? Rain knelt down, eyes wet but steady. We're home, he said. Not the Earth we lost, but a galaxy that's ready to begin again. They stepped onto the surface together. The landing bay opened like a door into a new world. Alan looked up at the broken towers, at the people gathering in silence, at the stars beyond. This was where the gods lived? She asked. Rain nodded slowly. And now? She whispered. He looked around. Now, this is where humanity returns. On the steps of the ruined temple, Veil Threx waited, his robe torn, his head bare, his pride gone. He fell to one knee. As Rain approached, I speak not for gods, he said. I speak for those who are blind. And now see. Rain raised a hand. No more kneeling, he said. We came to remind, not to rule. We won't replace tyrants with new ones. Behind them, the crowd grew. People from dozens of species once divided, now united stood side by side. No one shouted, no one bowed. They simply watched and remembered. Nova's voice echoed softly in Rain's ear. Transmission request from 13 liberated systems. He nodded. Patched them through. A moment later, voices filled the air. A child from the planet. Sorin, a rebel leader from Helix 4. A scientist from the ruins of Dressen. Each spoke the same words. We welcome humanity home. Tears fell from eyes Rain hadn't known could still cry. He looked up at the stars. He could see them clearly. Now, not as enemies, not as cold, but as open paths. Alan tugged on his sleeve. Will we rebuild Earth? Rain smiled gently. No, he said. Earth lives in us now. The Requiem powered down. For the first time in centuries, its engines went quiet, not from failure, but from peace. Across the galaxy, the red sky faded. The old fear vanished. With it, new voices rose, stories of the past, but dreams of the future. On a quiet world far from the war, a monument was built, not to gods, not to warriors, but to memory. It read, they tried to silence Earth, but Earth returned, and with it truth. Alan looked up at her father. What now? Rain took her hand and looked across the city, now filled with new life. Now we explore. He said, we teach, we listen, And if anyone tries to become gods again, he looked at the requiem resting in the valley. We remind them. What happened the last time? The stars sparkled again this time, not as a warning, but as an invitation. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy belonged to everyone. But it remembered. It always would, because humans came. Back not as conquerors, not as gods, but as fire, as memory, as truth, and above all, as hope.